My older brother cheated with my other brother's fiancée for 4 months. They were planning their wedding while sleeping together behind his back. But 2 years later, she betrayed him the same way, and now he's begging for forgiveness. The family turned their backs, and he never saw this justice coming. I'm 22 years old. I work in digital marketing, and I've basically watched my family destroy itself in the most horrible way you can imagine. And the worst part of it all is that it was because of someone who was supposed to protect us. You know? Because that's how we were raised, with this idea that family is everything, and that loyalty is the most sacred thing that exists. My dad always told us, blood is thicker than water. He literally repeated it to us every time we fought as kids or when one of us had problems. And we all believed it. All of us except Trevor, turns out. There are 4 of us siblings. Trevor is the oldest. He's 29 now. He was always the golden child, you know, the charismatic one, the one everyone adored, the one who could do anything, and Mom and Dad would just sigh and say, "Oh, Trevor," with that little smile. Then there's Ian, the middle one, 25 years old, completely opposite to Trevor, quieter, more serious, one of those guys who works hard for everything they have and never makes drama. Victoria is 26. She's the only girl. Super level-headed and practical, like the one who always has a cool head when everyone else is losing theirs. And then there's me, the baby of the family. And I guess I was always like everyone's confidant because I was the youngest and everyone told me their stuff. We grew up in a normal house, middle class. Dad worked at an insurance company and Mom was an elementary school teacher. We weren't rich, but we didn't lack anything either. The thing is that our parents instilled in us from a young age this almost obsessive idea of family loyalty. Like we could fight with each other all we wanted, but if someone from outside touched one of us, we all jumped to defend. I remember once in middle school, a kid hit Ian and Trevor, who was already in college, showed up at the school and basically threatened the kid. Trevor was like 18 years old and was pretty intimidating when he wanted to be. Dad didn't punish him. In fact, he patted to him on the back and said, "That's taking care of your brother." I guess that's why what happened later was so devastating, because they broke us using exactly the values they had taught us to worship. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me backtrack a bit. Ian met Chelsea when he was like 23 years old. At work, I think. Or maybe it was at a networking event. I don't even remember well. What I do remember is that the first time he brought her to a family dinner, we were all like, "Wow, she's super pretty and seems really nice." Chelsea was one of those girls who fit perfectly in any situation. You know, she always knew what to say, always looked good, always smiling. She was 24 at the time. Ian was completely in love. Like I had never seen him like that with anyone, and they dated for 2 years before he proposed to her. When Ian announced the engagement, it was a really nice moment. Honestly. It was at a family dinner. He stood up and gave this kind of shy speech about how Chelsea was the love of his life and how excited he was for her to officially join the family. Mom and Dad cried. Victoria gave Chelsea a huge hug, and Trevor patted Ian on the back and said something like, "Finally, someone in this family settles down." At that moment, I thought it was weird because Trevor had always been the womanizer of the family, like he had a different girlfriend every 6 months, but I didn't give it much importance. They started planning the wedding for the following year. Chelsea came to the house a lot, helped Mom with organization stuff, spent time with all of us. And this is where things started happening that in retrospect were giant red flags, but in the moment, like nobody wanted to see them or admit them. Chelsea and Trevor started having like this weird dynamic of inside jokes and looks that I didn't understand. At first, I thought they were just becoming friends. You know, because she was going to be part of the family and he was the older brother-in-law. It seemed normal that they got along well, but then things got weirder. I remember once we were all at my parents' house for a Sunday barbecue, and I saw Chelsea and Trevor in the kitchen laughing about something, and when Ian walked in, they like immediately changed their body language, like they separated and started talking about something completely different. I was there cutting vegetables and I noticed it, but I told myself I was imagining things. Another time, I saw them texting on their phones during a family dinner, and when I asked them what was so funny, Chelsea just said, "Oh, nothing. Trevor was sending me a meme, but they didn't show it to us." Ian started noticing it too. I remember perfectly one night, like 6 months after the engagement. We were at his apartment having some beers. He lived alone at that time. Chelsea still had her own place. And out of nowhere, he says to me, "Hey, do you notice anything weird between Chelsea and Trevor?" And I froze, because I had noticed things, but didn't want to say anything. because I didn't want to be the one who created drama or made crazy accusations. I told him what kind of weird things, and he sighed and told me, I don't know. Like they spend a lot of time together, and they have these jokes I don't understand. And sometimes when I arrive, she puts away her phone really quickly. I asked him if he had talked to her, and he told me no, that he felt stupid for even thinking it, that Trevor was his brother and Chelsea was his fiancée, and he was probably just being paranoid. I told him to trust his gut, that if something felt weird, he should probably talk to her. But he just shook his head and said, I don't want to be that kind of jealous, insecure boyfriend. And I understood it. Honestly. Because accusing your brother and your fiancé of something like that is heavy. You know? It's like once you say it, there's no going back. 2 more months passed and things got worse. Chelsea would cancel plans with Ian to help Trevor with I don't know what thing from his work. Or Trevor would show up at Chelsea's apartment when Ian was working to drop something off, or I don't know what excuse. Victoria also started noticing it and mentioned it to me. She told me, do you think something is going on between those two? And I didn't know what to think anymore, because on one hand, it was my older brother and my other brother's fiancé, and on the other hand, the signs were there and were impossible to ignore. And then everything exploded. It was 3 weeks before they were going to send out the wedding invitations. Literally, Chelsea already had the dress bought, and everything was practically ready. Ian came home from work one day. By then, Chelsea had already moved in with him, and she was sitting on the couch crying. He told me all this afterwards, obviously because I wasn't there. He asked her what was wrong, and she just kept crying and saying, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't want this to happen. Ian told me that at that moment he already knew, his body already knew before his brain processed the words. He asked her what had happened, and Chelsea confessed to him that she had been having an affair with Trevor for the last 4 months. 4 months. While they were planning their wedding, while they were choosing the menu and the flowers and the music, she was sleeping with his brother. She told him that at first they had only been texting and it had felt like a friendship, but then it had turned into something more, and they hadn't been able to stop. She told him she was in love with Trevor and that she couldn't marry Ian feeling like this. Ian called me that night, and never in my life will I forget how his voice sounded. He was completely broken, he sounded like a lost child, and he just told me, can Victoria and you come, please, I need you to come. Victoria and I got in my car, a 2015 Honda Civic. That was a piece of crap, but it worked, and drove like crazy to his Claire apartment. When we arrived, Chelsea had already left. She had packed some things and taken off. Ian was sitting on the living room floor with his back against the couch, still in his work clothes, and he had this empty look that broke my heart. We sat with him on the floor, and he told us everything. Victoria and I looked at each other, and I think we both wanted to vomit. I literally felt nauseous when I processed what had happened. We couldn't believe it. I mean, we could because we had seen the signs, but at the same time it was no, this can't really be happening. We asked him where Chelsea was, and he said she had gone to Trevor's house, that she had basically moved in with him that same night. And that was like another blow, because not only had this happened, but she had chosen Trevor so quickly that she hadn't even waited a day. We asked him if he had talked to Trevor, and he said no, that Trevor had sent him 20 text messages, but that he hadn't read them. I grabbed Ian's phone, with his permission obviously, and read some of the messages. They were pathetic, honestly. Bro, I need to explain to you. It wasn't planned. It just happened. This is bigger than us. I love you, brother. But I love her. Each message made me sicker than the previous one. That night we stayed with Ian, Victoria, and I. We ordered Chinese food that nobody ate and basically just sat there with him. At some point, at 2 in the morning, Ian said the saddest thing I've ever heard. He said, "Why wasn't I enough? What does Trevor have that I don't?" And the truth is, there was no answer to that because Trevor didn't have anything special. He was just more charismatic and more manipulative, and apparently a traitor piece of shit. The next day we had to tell my parents. Ian didn't want to go, but Victoria and I insisted they had to know. That we couldn't let Trevor tell them his version first, and manipulate it. We went to my parents' house, and when we arrived, Trevor was already there with Chelsea. Apparently they had arrived an hour before to give them the news themselves first. When we walked in and saw Trevor sitting on the couch with Chelsea holding hands, touching her as if he had every right in the world, Ian had to leave the house. He literally turned around and left, because he said if he stayed 1 more second, he was going to do something he would regret. Mom was crying in the kitchen, and Dad had this expression on his face I had never seen, like pure fury mixed with disappointment. Victoria went straight to Trevor and yelled at him, "You're trash! How could you do this to him?" And Trevor tried to do his speech of, "We didn't plan it. We just fell in love. We can't control what we feel." And Chelsea was there saying, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But I really love Trevor." And I just thought, shut up. Please shut up. Because every word that came out of her mouth made everything worse. Dad told Trevor to get out of his house. Like he told him, "Get up and get out now, and I don't want to see you again." Trevor tried to argue, tried to explain, tried to use all that family is forever shit that Dad had instilled in us, but Dad just yelled louder, "Get out of my house." And Trevor finally left with Chelsea. Mom tried to stop him, tried to tell Dad they had to talk, that they had to find a way to get through this as a family, but Dad told her there was nothing to discuss, that Trevor had betrayed his brother in the worst possible way, and that to him Trevor no longer existed. I went out to look for Ian and found him sitting in my car, crying. He was 25 years old, a full-grown adult, and he was crying like, I don't know, like a child who had everything taken away. I sat with him and didn't say anything because, what could I say, really? After a while, he told me, "How am I going to trust someone again? How am I going to believe when someone tells me they love me?" And I had no answer for that either. The following months were an absolute nightmare. The family literally split into two camps. On Ian's side were Dad, Victoria, me, and basically all the aunts and uncles and cousins when they found out what had happened. On Trevor's side was only Mom, and that caused huge problems between my parents. Mom said that Trevor was still her son, and that she couldn't just cut him out of her life. That yes, he had done something horrible, but that family should forgive. Dad told her that Trevor had destroyed Ian and that he had chosen a woman over his brother, that he had violated everything they had raised their children to believe in. Mom visited Trevor and Chelsea in secret at first, then openly when she realized Dad wasn't going to change his mind. She tried to organize family dinners and force us all to go, but none of us would go if Trevor was going to be there. I remember once Mom called me crying, telling me, "Please come to dinner. Trevor is going to be here and I need the family to be together." And I had to tell her, "Mom, I can't. What Trevor did was unforgivable, and I'm not going to sit down to dinner with him like nothing happened." She told me I was young and that someday I would understand that forgiveness is important, and I told her that forgiveness is earned, and that Trevor hadn't done anything to earn it. Chelsea and Trevor got engaged like 3 months after everything exploded. Mom told us like it was happy news, like Chelsea and Trevor are getting married. Isn't it wonderful? And Victoria literally hung up on her. They got married 6 months after that, a small wedding in a place I didn't recognize in the photos Mom showed us without anyone asking to see them. Only Mom went from our family. Ian by then had already moved to a new apartment because he couldn't be in the place where he had lived with Chelsea, had blocked Trevor on everything, and was basically trying to rebuild his life from scratch. Victoria got a job in another city and moved like 4 months after all this. She told me she couldn't stay because every place reminded her of when we were a happy family, and now everything was broken. Family dinners stopped existing. Dad and Mom basically lived separate lives in the same house. He would go to his study when she invited Trevor and Chelsea. She would go out with friends when Dad organized something with Ian. It was depressing, honestly, seeing how everything had fallen apart so completely. Ian was bad for a long time. He went out little, worked a lot, and the few plans he made he generally canceled at the last minute. Victoria and I tried to be there for him, but sometimes it was hard because he had closed himself off so much. He started therapy like a year after all this, which I thought was good. But I don't know if it really helped him or if he just learned to function with the pain, you know? And then, like 2 years after everything exploded, karma arrived, and it arrived heavy. Turns out Chelsea cheated on Trevor. With a guy from her work, I think, or maybe it was a friend. Honestly, the details are blurry because, to be honest, I wasn't very interested in Chelsea's life at that point. But basically, Trevor came home one day and found her with another guy, or she confessed, or something like that. Mom called all of us. Literally. Ian, Victoria, and me, crying, saying that Trevor was devastated, that Chelsea had left him, that he needed his family. And you know what? None of us went. Victoria told Mom directly. Now he knows how Ian felt. Maybe this will teach him something about karma. I didn't say anything, but I didn't go see Trevor either. Ian, when Mom called him, told her he couldn't help him, that he was still processing what Trevor had done to him, and that he simply didn't have the emotional capacity to console him for experiencing exactly the same thing he had caused Ian. Mom was furious with all of us. She told us we were cruel, that Trevor was suffering and that we as a family should be there for him. I told her, Mom, Trevor chose not to be there for Ian when he betrayed him. He chose Chelsea over his brother, and now he's reaping what he sowed. She told me I was resentful and that someday I would regret not forgiving. I told her maybe, but that day wasn't today. Dad didn't give in either. When Mom told him what had happened with Chelsea and Trevor, he just said that Trevor had made his bed and now he had to lie in it. Mom yelled at him. How could he be so cold with his own son? And Dad responded that Trevor had stopped being his son the day he betrayed Ian that way, that family loyalty worked both ways and that Trevor had broken it irreparably. Trevor tried to contact Ian directly. He sent him messages saying, Brother, now I understand what I did to you. Now I understand the pain. Please forgive me. I need to talk to you. Ian showed me the messages and asked me what I thought he should do. I told him that decision could only be made by him, but that if I were in his place, I probably wouldn't respond because, too, years of pain doesn't get erased with a text message when the same thing finally happens to you. Ian didn't respond. It's been like 6 months since Chelsea left Trevor. Mom still visits him, still tries to get any of us to talk to him, still insists the family should be united. Dad still refuses to see or talk to him. Victoria is in another city living her life. Ian is finally starting to date someone new. A girl from his work who seems like a really good person and who doesn't know Trevor, which I think is good for him. I'm still like the bridge between everyone, the one who listens to Mom cry about how her family was destroyed, the one who listens to Ian talk about his fears of trusting again, the one who listens to Dad say he did the right thing by cutting off Trevor. The truth is, I don't know if things are ever going to be fixed. I think Mom has hope that at some point we're all going to forgive and forget and we're going to be a happy family again. But honestly, I don't see how that could happen. Trevor basically destroyed Ian at his most vulnerable moment, betrayed everything we had been taught to believe in, and chose his own desire over his brother. And now that he experienced the same thing, now that he knows how it feels, he expects everyone to forget what he did and forgive him immediately. Part of me feels sorry for Trevor. I guess. He lost Chelsea, he lost most of his family, and he's basically alone except for Mom. But another bigger part of me thinks this is exactly what he deserved, that karma exists and that it finally caught up with someone who thought he could do whatever he wanted without consequences. I don't know if that makes me a bad person, but it's how I feel. Ian told me last week that he finally feels like he can breathe again, like he's finally coming out of the dark tunnel he'd been in for the last 2 years. He told me there are still bad days, days when he thinks about everything he lost, not just Chelsea but Trevor too, because before all this Trevor had been his older brother and his friend. He told me that sometimes he misses that, misses when we were all a family and things were simple, but that he can't go back to that place, that that version of his family no longer exists and that he has to accept it and move on. I guess that's what we're all doing, moving forward with the broken version of our family. Dad and Ian have their relationship. Victoria visits them when she can. I'm there for everyone, and Mom is divided between the two worlds, trying to maintain some connection with all her children. There are no more complete family gatherings, no more birthdays together, no more that feeling of unity we had before, and all because Trevor couldn't keep his hands off his brother's fiancée. Sometimes I wonder if Trevor is really sorry, or if he's only sorry because now it happened to him. I wonder if he really understands the damage he caused, or if he only understands his own pain now. And the truth is, I'll probably never know because I don't plan to talk to him. To find out. I chose my side a long time ago. And my side is Ian, the brother who was betrayed and who had to completely rebuild his life. My side is Dad, who maintained his principles even though it meant losing his oldest son. My side is Victoria, who left because she couldn't be around so much toxicity. And Mom, well, Mom is trying to be mother to everyone and is probably killing herself in the process. But that was her decision, to defend Trevor when nobody else would. And I respect that, I guess, even though I don't understand it. Because to me what Trevor did is unforgivable, and no amount of karma or suffering of his own is going to change that. He destroyed Ian, he destroyed our family, and he destroyed the trust we all had in him. And those things don't get fixed with apologies or with experiencing the same pain you caused. So here we are, a family that was once united and happy, now permanently divided by a betrayal. That should never have happened. And the saddest thing is that everything could have been avoided if Trevor had simply respected his brother, if Chelsea had been honest, if either of them had thought about someone other than themselves. But they didn't, and now we're all living with the consequences.